What if I told you there was a kid from Michigan, a shy, braces-wearing teenager from the suburbs, who would go on to become the greatest American-born hockey player in NHL history? A player who wasn't supposed to thrive in the frozen wasteland of Western Canada's junior leagues, who moved to Texas when everyone said hockey would never work there, who sacrificed offensive glory to become a two-way force, and who, by the time he hung up his skates, would hold every major American scoring record in the book. Yes, we're talking about Mike Modano, the smooth skating superstar who changed the game for American hockey forever. How did a quiet kid from Livonia become a Stanley Cup champion, a World Cup hero, and the face of hockey in the American South? To find out, we have to rewind to where it all began, in a working-class Detroit suburb where a young boy fell in love with the game. Mike Modano was born on June 7, 1970 in Livonia, Michigan, where hockey wasn't exactly at the top of the sports hierarchy. He was the third child and only son of Michael Sr. and Karen Modano, joining older sisters Sandy and Linda in a tight-knit working-class family. Young Mike was a natural athlete from the jump. Before he ever touched a hockey stick, he was dominating damn near every sport he tried. Baseball trophies lined the shelves of his childhood home. He crushed punt, pass, and kick competitions. He played competitive doubles tennis. He even played golf, which he later claimed was his best sport. But Mike had a problem: boundless energy that sometimes caused trouble at school. His grades weren't terrible, but his rogue behavior was starting to concern his parents. One day, a family friend suggested, "Put him in hockey. It'll burn off that energy." Mike's dad, a construction worker with zero hockey background, decided to give it a shot. When Mike was 7 years old, his father taught him how to skate. And the moment he hit the ice, well, that was it. I loved it so much, and it was all day, every day after that. He'd play on the lake and in the backyard, but that wasn't enough to burn off his endless energy. So he turned the basement into his personal firing range, shooting pucks against the wall for hours. When that got boring, he recruited his mom to play goalie. She suited up with whatever household items she could find, armed with nothing but a garbage can lid as a blocker, while Mike rifled shots her way. He even slept in his gear so he'd be ready for practice the next morning. The quiet kid from suburban Detroit had found his calling. By the time he was a teenager, Modano was special. He had blazing speed, silky mitts, and a natural feel for the game that reminded scouts of the best European players. But to make it to the NHL, he'd have to leave everything behind. At age 15, Mike Modano made the hardest decision of his young life. He left home to play junior hockey in Canada. In 1986, a scout from the Prince Albert Raiders of the Western Hockey League saw Modano play just 2 shifts at a Canadian tournament. That was all it took. The scout immediately left the rink to register Modano's name on the team's WHL protected list before any other team could. Prince Albert, Saskatchewan was about as far from suburban Michigan as you could get, culturally and geographically. It was freezing cold, it was a small town, and the WHL was known for long bus rides and brutal physical hockey. When I got there, I felt like I had something to prove, Modano later said. That was the motivation to do well. I was in Canada where people love their sport. They expect nothing less than your best. Most American players with Modano's skill took the college route or headed to the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, which was less physical. But Modano, he went straight into the meat grinder of the WHL. At 16, Modano scored 32 goals. At 17, he exploded for 47 goals and 80 assists for 127 points in 65 games. He was a blur on the ice, a jet-propelled center who could skate faster than anyone and out-muscle even the biggest D-man. NHL scouts started filing reports that sounded like an ad copy for Superman, faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive. By spring of 1988, there was no doubt Mike Modano was going to be an NHL star. On June 11th of that same year, 4 days after his 18th birthday, Mike Modano's name was called at the NHL draft in Montreal. The Minnesota North Stars selected him first overall, making him only the second American-born player ever to go number 1 in NHL history. Brian Lawton had been the first in 1983. It was a huge moment for American hockey. Here was a kid from Michigan, not some imported European prodigy, going first overall in a league dominated by Canadians. Modano himself was stunned. "I was sweaty and more nervous than you've ever been," he later joked about the post-draft interview. He remembered sitting there watching the draft board thinking about what it would be like to play with Mario Lemieux in Pittsburgh. The Penguins had the 4th pick, but Minnesota GM Lou Nanne had other ideas, and Mike Modano was headed to the North Stars. But there was a problem. Contract negotiations stalled. So instead of jumping straight to the NHL, Modano returned to Prince Albert for one more dominant season. He put up 105 points and finished 20th in WHL scoring, despite playing 20 less games than any player ahead of him. The North Stars finally signed him on Christmas Day 1988, and he joined the team for the 1989-90 season. His first regular season NHL game, he scored his first career goal against Glenn Healy of the New York Islanders. By season's end, he'd notched 29 goals and 46 assists for 75 points. A pretty absurd rookie campaign. He earned a spot on the NHL All-Rookie team. He was also a finalist for the Calder Memorial Trophy as Rookie of the Year, but controversially lost to 31-year-old Sergei Makarov, who'd already played professionally in the Soviet Union for over a decade. The NHL would later impose an age limit on Calder candidates because of that decision. The 1990-91 season didn't start well for Modano. Playing under new coach Bob Gainey, who emphasized defense over offense, Modano's point production dipped. He potted just 28 goals and 64 points. Solid numbers, but a step back from his electric rookie year. Critics in Minnesota began calling him an underachiever. Some even compared him to Trevor Linden, the number 2 pick from his draft class. The pressure was mounting. Modano even confronted Gainey over playing style issues, frustrated that his offensive creativity was being stifled. But then the playoffs started and everything changed. The North Stars, a gritty underdog squad, sneaked into the postseason with just 68 points. Nobody gave them a chance, but Modano and his teammates had other ideas. It doesn't matter how you got there, Modano later reflected. What matters is that you're there. The North Stars went on an improbable run. They knocked off the Chicago Blackhawks in the first round. Then came the St. Louis Blues, who they took down in 6 games. In the Campbell Conference Finals, they faced defending Stanley Cup champions Edmonton, led by Mark Messier and Yari Curry. Minnesota won that series too. The Met Center was electric every night. Modano, just 20 years old, was playing the best hockey of his young career. Then, the Stanley Cup Finals, a date with destiny against the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Penguins were a juggernaut. Mario Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr, Paul Coffey, Ron Francis, Tom Barrasso. It was an all-star team in its prime. The North Stars fought hard. They won Game 1 in Pittsburgh 5-4, but the Penguins roared back, winning 4 of the next 5 games to take the series. Modano was held to just 2 goals and 4 points in 6 finals games. It was a bitter defeat, but it taught him a valuable lesson. It taught me a lot about what it takes to win in this league, he said years later. You can't just rely on talent. You need depth, you need discipline, and you need everyone buying in. The experience hardened him, made him hungrier, and little did he know hockey was about to shift in a way nobody expected. On March 10, 1993, North Stars owner Norm Green dropped the bombshell. The team was moving to Dallas, Texas. Dallas? Really? That's Cowboys country. Everyone laughed. Texas was where college football and the NFL ruled. It was a place where it only snowed once in a blue moon. What chance would hockey ever have there? For Modano, the news was bittersweet. He was a fan favorite in Minnesota. He'd been there since he was 18. You could see the kids in the crowd wearing North Star sweaters, he later recalled. It was emotional. I loved Minnesota, but at the same time, I understood it was a business. On the bright side, Dallas represented a fresh start, different expectations, different pressure, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to build something special. The Stars' first season in Dallas, 1993-94, was bumpy. The team struggled to find its identity, but Modano, he exploded. He tucked 50 goals and put up 93 points, career high totals at the time, and instantly became the face of the franchise. He sold the most jerseys, he received the most fan mail. Modano embraced his role as ambassador for the sport. He did charity work, visited schools, and appeared at youth hockey camps. He was selling hockey in a football town, and somehow it was working. Every fan who made it to a game left with a smile on their face, he said. That was the goal, to give them something to cheer about. But Modano knew that to win a championship, he'd have to evolve as a player. He couldn't just be an offensive star. He'd have to become a complete 200-foot player. By 1996, the Stars had built a talented core, but playoff success was still elusive. They had skill, they had heart, but something was missing. Enter Ken Hitchcock as head coach. Hitchcock was a no-nonsense coach known for his defensive systems and demanding style. And from day one, he pushed Modano harder than anyone ever had. He demanded that Modano become a complete player, not just an offensive wizard, but a defensive force who could shut down the other team's best players. He pushed the right buttons and got the best out of me, Modano later said. It wasn't easy. There were times I wanted to tell him to back off, but looking back, it's exactly what I needed. Where Modano had been known purely for his speed and scoring, Hitchcock told him, "It's not just about you. It's about the image you show to everybody else. You're the leader of this team. If you don't backcheck, nobody will. If you don't play defense, nobody will." Modano took the message to heart. That summer, he and Hitchcock bonded in Colorado, building trust and working on his conditioning. They watched film together. They talked about systems. They built a relationship based on mutual respect. GM Bob Gainey also added veteran leaders to the roster: Joe Nieuwendyk, Ed Belfour, Darian Hatcher, Guy Carbonneau. And in 1998, they signed Brett Hull, one of the greatest goal scorers in NHL history. The transformation paid off immediately. The Stars won the Central Division in 1996-97 and the President's Trophy in 1997-98 with the league's best record. But Modano's individual transformation was even more impressive. He went from being a pure offensive threat to one of the best two-way players in the NHL. He became a Selke Trophy finalist in 2001, recognizing his defensive excellence. He was a Lady Byng finalist in 2003 for his sportsmanship and skill, and his plus-minus ratings improved like crazy. Former Stars GM Doug Armstrong later said, "He probably would have had 300 or 400 more points had he played in a different system. But I think Mike is going to go down as maybe one of the best two-way players to ever play the game." Hitchcock himself admitted, "I learned as much from him as he did from me. The things I learned from him, I've been able to pass on to other good players." And in 1999, all the pieces finally clicked. The 1998-99 season was special from the start. The Stars dominated from opening night, finishing with 114 points, a franchise record. They won their second straight President's Trophy. Modano was at the peak of his powers. He scored 34 goals and notched 47 assists for 81 points. He was playing over 23 minutes a night. And most importantly, he was shutting down the opponent's top line every single shift. In the playoffs, the Stars marched through the Western Conference. They swept Edmonton in the first round. They beat St. Louis in 6 games. And then came the ultimate test, the Colorado Avalanche. The Avs, much like the Penguins of the 90-91 season, were loaded. Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, Patrick Waugh, Chris Drury. They'd won the Cup in 1996 and were still considered the class of the West. Colorado took a 3-2 series lead, and it looked like the Stars' season was over. But in Game 6 in Dallas, the Stars rallied. Modano was everywhere, back-checking, forechecking, creating chances. They won Game 6, forcing a Game 7 in Denver. "We played the best hockey of my career in those games," Modano said. "Everything clicked. We executed Hitch's system perfectly." In Game 7, Mike Keane scored twice, and the Stars won 4-1. They were headed to the Stanley Cup Finals. Their opponent, the Buffalo Sabres, led by goaltending legend Dominik Hasek, widely considered the best goalie in the world. And then, in Game 2, disaster struck. With about 10 minutes left in the second period, Modano took a bone-crunching hit from Sabres D-man Jay McKee. Pain shot through his arm. He knew immediately something was wrong. "I broke my wrist," he said after the game, "but I wasn't coming out." For the rest of the series, Modano played through agony. Every face-off, every shot, every hit, it all sent waves of pain through his arm. But he didn't complain. He didn't make excuses. He just played. "This is the best time of our lives right now. I don't want to miss out. It would take a lot to keep me out. At this time of year, you take the doctor's and the trainer's opinion and pretty much throw them out the door." In Game 6, one of the longest games in Stanley Cup Finals history, the Stars and Sabres battled into triple overtime. It was past midnight. Players were exhausted. The tension was unbearable. At 14:51 of the third overtime period, Modano fired a shot from the left circle. Hasek made a save, but Brett Hull crashed the net and buried the rebound. Goal. Dallas had won the Stanley Cup. Hull's goal was controversial. His skate was in the crease, which at the time was supposed to negate the goal. But after a long review, the officials let it stand. The rule was vague, and the league later clarified that because Hull had possession of the puck, the goal counted. But for Modano, the controversy didn't matter. All that mattered was the cup. "I was so glad when it went in," he told reporters afterward, cradling his broken wrist. "Glad that we won, of course, but just glad it was over. It was such a huge relief." He finished the playoffs with 23 points in 23 games, leading all Stars players. And when he hoisted the Stanley Cup overhead, tears streaming down his face, it was the culmination of everything he'd worked for. "It's the best feeling in the world," he said. "This is what you dream about as a kid. And to do it in Dallas in front of these fans who embraced us from day one, it's perfect." The next season, the Stars returned to the finals, only to lose in 6 games to the New Jersey Devils in their suffocating defensive trap. It was heartbreaking, but Modano had proven he belonged among the NHL's elite. Before the Cup win in Dallas, Modano had already cemented his legacy on the international stage. In the summer of 1996, he was part of one of the greatest American hockey teams ever put together. The inaugural World Cup of Hockey featured NHL superstars from every nation, and Team USA was loaded. The roster included 6 future Hall of Famers: Brian Leetch, Chris Chelios, Brett Hull, Pat LaFontaine, Phil Housley, and Modano himself. Mike Richter was between the pipes. Bill Guerin, Keith Tkachuk, Doug Weight, Tony Amonte, the list went on. But Team Canada was debatably even more stacked. They had 11 future Hall of Famers: Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Joe Sakic, Eric Lindros, Steve Yzerman, Paul Coffey, Scott Stevens, Martin Brodeur, and more. "They were stacked," Modano later admitted. "On paper, they should have destroyed us. But Team USA had something special: chemistry and a chip on their shoulder. We had a swagger about us," Bill Guerin recalled. "We knew people didn't think we could beat Canada. That motivated us." The Americans went undefeated in the preliminary round, beating Canada 5-3, Russia 5-2, and Slovakia 9-3. Modano was one of the team's top scorers, using his speed to create havoc on every shift. In the best-of-3 finals, Canada took Game 1 in Philadelphia 4-3 in overtime, but coach Ron Wilson rallied his team. "What better opportunity to do this," Wilson told them. "Win 2 games in a row in Montreal against Team Canada." Game 2 in Montreal was all USA. They won 5-2, with Modano assisting on 2 goals. The series was tied, forcing a decisive Game 3. The atmosphere was electric. Fans threw things at the American players on their way to the rink. The arena was a sea of Canadian flags and painted faces. This was hockey's holy land, and the home team was supposed to win. Late in the third period, Canada took a 2-1 lead and looked poised to win, but then the roof caved in. With 3:18 left, Brett Hull deflected a Brian Leetch shot to tie the game. Just 43 seconds later, Tony Amonte buried a rebound to give the U.S. the lead. Darian Hatcher sank an empty netter, and Adam Deadmarsh potted another with 18 seconds to go. Final score, USA 5, Canada 2. The Americans had done it. They'd beaten Canada on Canadian soil in a best-on-best tournament for the first time. Modano skated around the ice, arms raised, soaking in the moment. Wayne Gretzky later said that the 1996 U.S. team had a swagger that helped to popularize the sport of hockey in the U.S. For Modano, it was validation. American players could compete with and beat the best in the world. Because of the circumstances, I think your focus and your commitment to detail is always much better when you're on the road, Modano said. All those things forced us to focus and think about what we were doing even more. 6 years later, Modano would get another chance at Olympic glory in 2002 at Salt Lake City. Coached by 1980 legend Herb Brooks, Team USA made it all the way to the gold medal game, where they faced Canada again. This time, Canada won 5-2. It was a heartbreaking loss, and one that still stings for Modano and his teammates. "We just knew. Sometimes your window of opportunity is very small, and you love to take advantage of it when you're there," Modano said years later. Having Herb Brooks on the bench, a type of atmosphere that was really tough to match. He played in one more Olympic Winter Games after that in Turin in 2006, but the Americans shockingly placed 8th overall. He finished his international career with a silver medal, not gold, but still a badge of honor. As the 2000s rolled on, Modano continued to pile up points and cement his legacy as the greatest American player ever. On March 17, 2007, in an away game against the Nashville Predators, Modano scored his 502nd and 503rd career goals, breaking Joe Mullen's NHL record for most goals by an American-born player. It was St. Patrick's Day, and Modano, fittingly, gave American hockey fans a gift they'd never forget. When the final horn sounded, his teammates mobbed him. The opposing Predators even tapped their sticks on the ice in recognition, a sign of respect reserved for the game's greatest moments. Then, on November 7, 2007, Modano made history again. In an away game against the San Jose Sharks, he needed just 2 points to break Phil Housley's record of 1,232 career points by a U.S.-born player. He didn't waste any time. Just 2 minutes and 19 seconds into the first period, in his first shift of the game, Modano ripped a clapper low glove on Sharks tendy Evgeny Nabokov. Just over 2 minutes later, on a shorthanded breakaway, he potted the goal that broke Housley's record. 2 goals, 2 points, record broken. Even on the road, the Shark tank erupted. Fans stood and cheered for minutes. His teammates poured over the bench to congratulate him. And then, President George W. Bush called him from Air Force One to congratulate him. Mike Modano Tribute Night was held 2 weeks later on November 21, 2007. Joe Mullen, Phil Housley, Brett Hull, and Stars owner Tom Hicks all spoke about Modano's impact on American hockey. Capping off the emotional night, Modano scored the game-tying goal halfway through the third and added a shootout winner in a 3-2 win over Anaheim. Of course he did. By the time he retired, Modano's numbers told the story. 561 goals, 813 assists, and 1,374 points in 1,499 NHL games. All American-born records that still stand today. He's one of the very few Americans to reach both 500 goals and 1,000 points. Patrick Kane, the next closest active player, is just over 20 points behind. Modern superstars routinely draw comparisons to Modano. Dallas coach Pete DeBoer said in 2024, he was really that era's Connor McDavid as far as skating went. He was the guy who could skate by everybody on the ice. After 20 seasons with the North Stars franchise, Dallas decided not to re-sign Modano in the summer of 2010. It was a shocking and heartbreaking end to an era. I was surprised, Modano admitted. I thought I had more left in the tank. But again, it's a business. Days later, Modano signed a 1-year deal with his hometown Detroit Red Wings. It was a homecoming 22 years in the making. The shy kid from Livonia was coming home. Since number 9 was already retired in Detroit for Gordie Howe, Modano wore 90 instead, a clever nod to his career number. In his first home game at the Joe Louis Arena, the crowd gave him a standing ovation. And just 5:35 into the first period, Modano scored, a storybook moment for the Michigan native. It was surreal, he said. Growing up watching games here, idolizing guys like Yzerman and Lidstrom, and now I'm playing for the Red Wings. It was a dream come true. But the season didn't end the way he'd hoped. The Red Wings were eliminated in the second round of the playoffs by the Sharks in a hard-fought 4-3 series. Just before that, in a late-season game and a moment that still stings for Modano and his fans, coach Mike Babcock made him a healthy scratch for what would have been his 1,500th regular season game. It was a controversial decision that left a bitter taste. On September 23, 2011, after 21 seasons in the NHL, Mike Modano officially announced his retirement at a press conference in Dallas. The Stars signed him to a one-day contract so he could retire a Dallas Star, where he belonged. I will leave this game at peace with myself, with the love of my family, and with the memories that will last a lifetime, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I owe my life to this game. He thanked his parents, his sisters, his teammates, his coaches, and the fans who supported him through 2 decades. And then, one last time, he put on the Stars jersey and took a bow. In 2012, Modano was inducted into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. In 2014, he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame on the first ballot, a no-brainer for a player of his caliber. In 2017, he was named one of the 100 greatest NHL players in history as part of the NHL's Centennial Celebration. And on March 16, 2024, the Dallas Stars unveiled a bronze statue of Modano outside the American Airlines Center. His number 9 jersey flaps in mid-stride, forever frozen in time, capturing the speed and grace that defined his career. The Dallas mayor and media alike credit Modano with planting the seeds of hockey in Texas. Youth hockey participation skyrocketed during and after his career. Today, thousands of kids skate in Stars colors because of him. 30 years ago, we got on a plane in 1993 not knowing what to expect, Modano said at the statue unveiling. 5 years later, we gave you a Stanley Cup. We feel we've turned Dallas into a hockey town. Current Stars captain Jamie Benn, who briefly played with Modano, summed it up perfectly. Hockey is not what it is today in Texas without Mike being a big part of that. The statue stands next to one of Dirk Nowitzki, another big-time pro who became a Dallas icon. Two athletes from different sports, different backgrounds, who gave everything to a city that embraced them. For Modano, the statue represents more than a personal achievement. It represents what's possible when you commit to something bigger than yourself. What we accomplished off the ice, kids playing the game, the growth of hockey in Texas, that's a lot more important and more satisfying than what we did on the ice, he said. Mike Modano's story isn't just about statistics or championships. It's about a shy kid from Michigan who fell in love with hockey, sacrificed offensive glory for team success, and became the greatest American-born player the NHL has ever seen. He changed the game for American players. Before Modano, American-born players were often viewed as inferior to Canadians or Europeans. After Modano, that perception shifted. He proved that Americans could dominate at the highest level. He proved hockey could thrive in the South. When the Stars moved to Dallas, critics laughed, but Modano helped build a fan base from scratch, selling out buildings and inspiring a generation of Texan kids to pick up hockey sticks. And he inspired countless players to chase their dreams. Austin Matthews, a native of Arizona who went first overall in 2016, grew up idolizing Modano. So did Patrick Kane. So did countless others. Mike Modano showed us that it didn't matter where you came from, Matthews once said. If you worked hard enough, you could make it. As the statue outside American Airlines Center reminds us, legends are made through dedication, humility, and heart. And Mike Modano had all three. From the backyard frozen lakes of Livonia to the sub-zero arenas of Prince Albert, from Minnesota to Dallas to Detroit, from a first overall pick to a Stanley Cup champion to a Hall of Famer. The shy kid who slept in his gear became America's greatest hockey player, and his legacy will inspire generations to come. Thanks for watching. If you want to hear the story of another player who broke barriers and brought something entirely new to the NHL, check out our video on Jordan Tutu, how the NHL's first and only Inuk player changed the game forever. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your favorite Mike Modano moment in the comments. See you in the next one.